Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by National Hockey Now. It is Friday, October 21st. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and joined by another guest today, Nate Rapensky. You'll remember him. He joined us during the Stanley Cup playoffs last season. Happy to have Nate back with us. Nate, welcome back to the Ice Guys.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. Appreciate being back on the show. Obviously, a lot of fun last time. We got some really interesting early NHL action in this season, so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we'll start looking back at last night's action. It was a huge Thursday card, a lot of fascinating results to dissect and analyze. The Montreal Canadiens 6-2 against Arizona. We warned you, Arizona, don't trust them to win 2 games in a row. They don't do that very often. They lose 6-2. I do want to bring up one thing in that game. It's nothing to do with anything on the scoreboard. Arbor Jacki, you want to step to this guy and fight him, you better be prepared for potential devastation. Because that was Zach Kassian's a pretty tough hombre. He's pretty rugged. He can defend himself. He's no slouch when it comes to dropping the gloves. And it reminded me what Jacki did last night on Zach Kassian of Chara with Brian McCabe. Like, I would say that was like almost 20 years ago or 15 years ago, just ragdolling him. Just looked like a little kid, Zach Kassian against Arbor Jacki in that fight last night. You better be prepared for potential bad pain, agony, and blues if you're going to step to that guy right now in a fight. That was pretty impressive to see in that Arizona-Montreal game last night. And that's what he's there for: physical presence, stand up for his teammates. But he can play. He's just not some guy that's capable of dropping the gloves. Jacki's got a good game from the defensive side of it. He can move the puck. He's got some ability on the blue line. And his story to get to the NHL has been pretty impressive. And that was an impressive beatdown he laid on Zach Kassian last night. Pittsburgh beats LA 6-1. Boston beats Anaheim in a shootout 2-1. Predators continue to struggle. Another alarming, very, very concerning loss for the Predators. Just the fashion they lost that game, right? They were up 3-2 going into the third period, 3-1 rather, going into the third period, and then 4 unanswered goals by the Columbus Blue Jackets to turn that game right around and a 5-3 victory. Wouldn't be the NHL and a big card without a big upset, and San Jose was that. How about that? The first win for the San Jose Sharks, and it comes against all teams, the New York Rangers. One of the best teams in the NHL last night, 3-2 in that one. We saw Ottawa after a sluggish first period bounce back strong, 5 unanswered to beat Washington 5-2. That was a good game for me, a sweep with Ottawa team total, Ottawa money line, the over hit because of a very late empty net goal. El Diablo, the Devils, 4-1 victory over the Islanders. That was a good result for me. Edmonton beating Carolina was not. We liked Carolina in that game, but give the Oilers credit. Dug down, needed a victory, beat a really good Carolina team 6-4, and all of a sudden that Carolina defense, which had only given up a goal in each of their first 3 games, they gave up a bunch in that one. How about the Buffalo Sabres? 6-3 upset against the Calgary Flames. Look, beating Edmonton's one thing. Beating Calgary, though, 6-3, putting 6 goals on the board against that Flames defense. This Buffalo Sabres team now 3-1 to start the year, and I'm telling you what, their team totals are going to be a gold mine of profits this year. 2.5, 3.5. It seems like even against good defensive teams, they can find the back of the net. Tate Thompson, another goal last night. Outstanding effort. A Tuck with the hat trick for the Buffalo Sabres. A great win for them in Calgary against the Flames, who clearly did not bring their best. We saw Minnesota, a much-needed win. Someone in that struggling group of teams was going to get a win. It was Minnesota, 4-3 in overtime. They didn't blow a multiple-goal lead this time, Vancouver, but they still blew a lead in the third period and ended up losing in overtime 4-3. That was a good result. We all liked overs, Alex and I, yesterday with that game. And then I want to say salute, and it's great to have him back. Big Civ Dave. Thanks, man. You're just Mr. Relat. You're that comfort food of NHL betting for me. Whenever things are going bad and I need a little ray of sunshine in my betting life in the National Hockey League, I can always count on Big Civ Dave to give up 4 goals in the first period and lead me to an overcash, which we got with that Winnipeg-Vegas game. And his bad start was a big part of that. So Vegas with a 5-2 win against Winnipeg. But definitely the highlights were Buffalo upsetting Calgary, San Jose upsetting the New York Rangers. And how about Toronto? I didn't even mention them. They come back and they beat Dallas 3-2. And I've never unloaded on a player prop for a goal scorer prop as nearly as much from a betting amount standpoint as I did last night with Nick Robertson at plus 500, plus 550 to score a goal in that game. I thought the price was ludicrous. You cannot price any top six forward in the National Hockey League, especially a guy with a great preseason that he had in Nick Robertson at that price, knowing he's going to get opportunities and minutes and chances playing with good players, Tavares and Nylander. Think about that his line mates were plus 135 and plus 155 to score a goal last night. Nick Robertson was plus 500 to plus 550. It can't happen. It's a bad job by odds makers. Terrible job, but that's why we're here to capitalize and mention these things here on the Ice Guys show. And Alex, we'll turn to you. I know you had a piece of that big-time plus price goal scorer prop as well on Robertson. And how was your night last night?
Yeah, it was pretty decent. Like I said, tailed that and cashed with the 5-1 winner. I mean, you've been red hot with these player props in this first week. Hope that can continue to bloom and blossom. But the biggest story for me was that Wild game. Had the best bet on that first period over. We get 4. We only needed 3. Back and forth battle, just like I kind of predicted and said. Vancouver has been great in the first period, and the Wild have been terrible in the first period. And we saw them trade off goals. And as soon as the Vancouver took that 1-goal lead, this is maybe right before the end of the second period, I tweeted out, I said, we're all going to hit Wild live if they score another goal, right? And I didn't even wait for another goal. I just waited until the intermission, got Wild plus 175 live, played it small. They tie it up late. They win it in overtime. So another blown lead for Vancouver. Just wonder, the writing, if it's going to be on the wall for Bruce Boudreau. I don't care what you did turning it around a year ago in an interim spot. If you keep losing these leads, at some point, you're going to have to fire everybody. These guys may not make it to American Thanksgiving, honestly, at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if they keep doing this in another 2 weeks. They're going to be looking for an entire new coaching staff. It's unacceptable. For the Wild, a much-needed win to wrap up that homestand that had been absolutely abysmal. Now they hit the road, have an early game tomorrow against the Boston Bruins. So they see if they can try to keep that momentum rolling forward. I don't know. I would have loved to have had them play one more home game to try to bet on them, but now hitting the road, that could be a different story. Like I said, Dave Riddick, arguably one of the worst backups in the league. That first period over, that was easy money too. 4 goals from Vegas in that big route. He's a guy that we're going to be looking to fade, probably team total overs, first period overs, whenever we see his name confirmed in net. Just looking at the rest of the board. Yeah, Edmonton, that was a big game for both teams, Edmonton and Carolina. I thought Carolina was going to step up and play a little bit better on the road, but Edmonton did what they need to do. That's a win you need to have if you're Edmonton at home, 6-4 against a quality team in the opposite conference. You're probably only going to see them one more time later in the year, and you might see them down the road potentially if all goes well this summer. So big win for Edmonton, make that statement. And Campbell, a little bit better. Things are going to roll in due time with Edmonton. They're not going to just turn into this lockstep, shut down defensive unit and score goals. They're going to play their game of hockey. That was their game of hockey last night. 6-4, but finding a way to win it. That's the kind of stuff you're going to get from Edmonton night in and night out.
Yeah, no question. Step in the right direction for Jack Campbell. Jay Woodcroft wants to see them play better defense than they have so far. There's no question. And we know they're capable of it. They have done it at times. They did it down the stretch in the regular season last year. They were playing really good in terms of their own end. They haven't gotten back to that point so far early in the season. But, Jay Woodcroft is hammering it home to his players that, hey, we want to be better in our own end than we've been so far these first few games. Nate, some thoughts from you on the action last night?
Yeah, I didn't have much. As I said, I've been sort of awaiting these first couple of weeks. Obviously, a surgery last week for me on an injury, an Achilles, right? So I've been out a little bit. But one of the things I've been playing a little bit with my group is the wild overs, particularly after the last game. So did have that last night. I think we got that at 6.5 originally, and Alex touched on it a little bit, right? Like the Wild have struggled with defense. Fleury hasn't been sharp, although he made some big saves last night. They're able to get, over 7 in overtime. So I think it was a big win for a Wild team. Obviously, still handicapped by the Parisi Suter contracts and those cap hits, and they're not able to add some of those pieces they'd like to, but I think they have a nice young team. The other one that stuck out for me and didn't bet it, but was looking at it is Vegas, right? I think Vegas is a little bit, after missing the playoffs last year, having that sort of collapse at the end, I think is a little bit underrated in the league this year. I mean, you lose somebody like Pacioretty, couple losses, but still their decor with Tedor, Pietrangelo, what they have up front with a healthy Stone, Eichel now in the lineup every day. I mean, I think they just still have a lot there and should be considered, really, in my mind, a favorite to come out of the West and potentially be a Stanley Cup contender. And so that was when I was watching, and you guys mentioned it with Riddick and net for Winnipeg. But I think Vegas is a team I'll look to jump on puck line or when I can on the road here, because I think they're still a bit undervalued by the market, and I think the talent up and down that lineup, 4 lines. You mentioned guys like Carlson, Riley Smith, like they just have so much depth, and so that's a team I look for to have a strong rebound this year for sure.
And I'm muted here. Yeah, it looks like when you look at this situation here with the Vegas Golden Knights, they've got they're basically a team where they've gotten off to a good start. I like the hire of Bruce Cassidy. We were all in the camp, myself, Alex B. Smith, our colleague Jimmy Murphy, who, again, we're waiting on Jimmy to be on. He will be at some point. He's a busy guy, but we'll get him on. But we were all in agreement, Jimmy, Alex, and I. Bruce Cassidy got a raw deal. All right, raw fucking deal with the Boston Bruins. He got basically thrown under the bus for the season kind of going awry last year, and they just made the decision we're going to go in another direction. Not saying that Jim Montgomery's doing actually a solid job so far. Boston's off to a nice start, but we still didn't think that Bruce Cassidy deserved to lose his job there with the Bruins. I thought it was unnecessary to get rid of him. So to me, when I look at this Boston Bruins team, this Vegas team, getting Bruce Cassidy, they're playing with great structure. They're actually getting the defense more involved in the play. I like that as well. And look, Jack Eichel, nice game last night. And overall, I still think he's got to continue to battle with consistency, but it's been a nice start for him personally as well. And I think Bruce Cassidy's coaching has certainly played a role in that. And even Aiden Hill was pretty solid in net, getting a rare start instead of Logan Thompson for the Golden Knights last night. All right, let's turn our attention to the Friday night NHL card. We have 3 games, and we'll start with the Battle of Florida. It's always fun when these two teams go head-to-head. Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers. Florida minus 115, home favorite, 6.5 being the total in this game. This one is, current form-wise, for me, I lean Florida in this game because Tampa Bay's got some real concerns. John Cooper, after the loss to Philadelphia, we said it multiple times on this show, they've played hard every game. The commitment to team defense has clearly been stronger under John Tortorella. That being said, you can't blow a game like that if you're Tampa Bay. You're up 2-0 to the Philadelphia Flyers at home. You're already off a game where you didn't play well against Pittsburgh, and you end up losing 3-2 out of the Flyers the other night. And the quotes from John Cooper were, I think, legit concern. I don't think it was just coach speak. It's like he really is worried for his team a little bit. He said, we should never have left that game with 0 points. We should have probably left with 2 points in the win. This group should have closed that game out, and we didn't. That's probably a little bit of a concern. That last line, that's probably a little bit of a concern. Normally he says, you know what, our group, I feel good. We've been here before. We've closed out games before. We know what it takes to win and defend leads, because we've done it for years in these big playoff games and Stanley Cup playoff series. The fact that he's coming out there and saying this is a concern, maybe he doesn't think this team's in a spot right now or in a place mentally and physically where they can close out games like they once did, because that to me tells you that he's worried about their ability right now. And offensively, when's the last time, guys, you've seen Tampa Bay 30th in the league in goals? 30th right now, 2.5 goals per game this season. You take Steven Stamkos off this team, nobody else has done a thing offensively for the Tampa Bay Lightning this year. I mean, you look at their numbers. You got Stamkos with 6 goals, 1 assist, 7 points in 4 games. He's been terrific. There's a goose egg for Nikita Kucherov. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding. You have 0 goals, a goose egg, nothing so far through 4 games this season. You've got Vlad Nemesnikov, no goals. You've got Hedman, with 3 points but no goals. Braden Point's only got 1 goal so far. Nothing from Alex Killorn this year. Hagel's done nothing. I mean, it's a concern right now. Absolutely. Nobody outside of Steven Stamkos has done anything in terms of production offensively for this team. I don't like where their game's at. I lean Florida here, but I think what's going to keep me off the game entirely is the spot. For Tampa Bay, it's certainly a spot where you would expect them to fire back strong. They're off 2 losses in a row now. And long term, the track record off 2 straight losses for Tampa Bay is really strong. Rarely this team has lost 3+ games in a row. But maybe this isn't the same Tampa Bay team, at least to start this season, that bounced back last year, 2 years ago, each time they lost 2 in a row. This could be a different team. So I'm a little bit worried. I lean Florida. I'm probably not going to bet the game. Totals wise, it could go either way, but I still think this could be an under spot. Florida doesn't want to play quite the same pace as they did last year, even though some of their recent games have gone over, and it was lucky as shit for their last game to go over the total against Philadelphia with that late goal. And Tampa Bay's not scoring at the moment. Offense has been dry. So I'd actually lean under 6.5 in this game. As far as the props go, there's one that stands out for Florida, Colin White. All right, keep an eye on him. He's on the third line for the Florida Panthers. You could take a shot with Verhaeghe. He's been in good form, 2 goals already. Matthew Tkachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Barkov, Balcers. I wouldn't argue with those guys, but Colin White on the third line for the Florida Panthers, and he's got 2 goals, 2 assists, and 4 points in 4 games this year for the Panthers on that third line. So if you want a little bargain bin value with your player props, Colin White for Florida might be a decent option for this game tonight. Alex, what are you thinking here? Lightning Panthers.
This is going to be a game I'm more likely going to pass. But I lean with the under 6.5. You get plus 115. You've mentioned about Florida, how they're trying to play a different style of hockey. Tampa not getting the offense. The one thing that scares me about this, and the reason why it's not an official play, is because these two teams absolutely despise one another. This is the first meeting since what happened last offseason. Tampa Bay sweeping Florida out of the playoffs. The whole Game 3, Game 4 debacle, where the Panthers hanging out at a strip club late into the night before the 4th game and all that stuff. And I said more than happy.
I had forgotten about that, Alex.
Yeah,
Great
reference.
Well, yeah, more than happy to remember those that series, because that was a good one. I called that sweep happening after the way Florida came out lifeless in Game 1, and of course in Game 2 I bet Florida. They didn't win the first period, which they didn't. I said Tampa would go on and sweep, so ended up cashing a 7-1 ticket off of that. So not the same Tampa Bay team, not the same Florida team that we saw from just a few months ago. These are 2 different teams, and they're both struggling to score. And the fact they both hate each other, however, is that, can this get rough and chippy, after the whistle? Can we see a lot of power play opportunities? And these are 2 teams that are still dangerous when you give them power play chances. So that's the one caveat I have toward betting the under. So it's just a lean here.
Just a lean to the under, kind of like me. I lean Florida, I lean under. I'm probably going to stay off here in this one. Nate, what about you, Tampa Bay and Florida?
Yeah, I think I like the under. I mean, I'm still getting, although a little bit of juice on it on FanDuel, the under 7. I think it's minus 130 or something. Last I looked, it's a little bit of juice, but maybe you play it to 6.5. I was looking at the stats. I mean, Tampa just has an abysmal, and some of this might regress to the mean, but an abysmal shooting percentage, right? 4.5%. They're bottom in the NHL. So that hasn't worked well for them. It just doesn't seem like, to me, too, with Tampa, you look at that second line and some of the guys they lost. Palat, in a lot of ways, to me, was like the straw that stirred the drink for the team from a depth perspective. I don't like Alex Killorn playing on the second line. He's a great player. He's a straight lines, hard, heavy guy, but he's not a second line player to me. I mean, in all of the playoffs last year, I think he had, in 23 games, he had 2 or 3 assists. That was it. He was off the score sheet goals completely. So I just don't like, Stamkos definitely has the goals. He's playing with Killorn, but a lot of that comes on that first power play unit for him. So I lean under here with just Tampa's lineup. I don't think it's as dynamic as it's been. I think they miss a guy like Ryan McDonough. I don't think the DR is good puck moving as they used to be. And then when you look at Florida, on the other hand, shooting percentage, and you talk a little bit again, regression to the mean, they're at 10%, right? They're top of the league, and I expect that to come down. So you look at 2 goalies, Bobrovsky, who's gotten off to a good start, Vasilevsky, obviously one of the best goalies in the league. I kind of lean under here, and the only fear I have, to Alex's point, you let these 2 dangerous power play units get out there, but I think both teams are a little bit different, and the firepower is not exactly there. So, under 6.5, or if you can get 7, for me is the play. And I'm actually, looking to bet that. Not super heavy, but definitely, a unit or a half a unit on that.
It might be worth it, Nate, to get the 7, because we've seen a lot of 4-3, 5-2 final scores. I find that's been happening a lot this year in the NHL. So it's pricey. I think even I just saw on the BetStamp app that you've got under 7 minus 144 now on
Okay.
FanDuel.
Well, it might be going up now. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be going up, but you know what? It might be worth it. Just a little security to go up to get the 7 instead of the
Sure.
6.5. That's one time usually when it's 6.5 versus 7 for an under, I'll try to find a 7, and if I got to lay a few extra cents on it, and instead of 6.5, at plus 100, minus 110, and under 7 at minus 130 or 40, I'll take the 7. So I think it's that important to have that extra little bit of security, because 7 is becoming the new common final score. 10 years ago, it was 6. 6 was a common final score, or 5. Yeah. We had a lot of 3-2 games 10, 20 years ago, and you'd have some 6s. Now 7 is becoming more of a common final score because of just the increase in scoring the last few years. So definitely, I think if you like Nate's under in this Tampa Bay, Florida game, it's not a bad option to buy up and get the 7. All right, Detroit and Chicago, the home opener. The madhouse on I don't know how mad it's going to be. It'll be more like a church on Madison maybe tonight and the rest of the season. But you've got Detroit, Chicago. You've got Detroit minus 115, road favorite, 6.5 the total in this game. How about the fact this opened minus 130 on Detroit? We've seen money come in on Chicago, believe it or not. Home opener. Detroit is dealing with a couple of key absences up front in the top 6 forward group. Jacob Braun is dealing with personal matters. He's away from the team. We hope everything's going to be well with him. Long-term, no doubt. And of course, Tyler Bertuzzi is going to be out for a long period of time. So I think there's some reaction to that. But, I think they've got enough forward-wise to still be able to produce offensively. I like, what I've seen from a lot of different players on this Red Wings team early in the season. I mean, they are an overtime loss away from being undefeated so far this season. They beat Montreal in their first game. They beat New Jersey on the road on a back-to-back. And they lost to LA in overtime in their last game. So that close to being undefeated. Now, has their schedule been tough so far? Not really, but it's not like it's getting much tougher here facing the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's a winnable game here for Detroit. There is one nagging concern I have for the Red Wings tonight, and it's their futility in Chicago. It's pretty crazy that they have really struggled at the United Center and in Chicago. They've lost 4 straight, and long term, I believe it's 5-14. In their last 19 trips to Chicago. But a lot of bad Detroit teams were in that mix, and some really good Chicago teams. If you go way back to, obviously, the 2010 decade when you had all those great Stanley Cup playoff years for the Chicago Blackhawks. So you do need to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's finally a year where Detroit looks like the better team in this one. I like Detroit here at the reasonable price, minus 110, minus 115. Alex, of course, is a Blackhawks fan. I'm interested to hear his thought on this. I think it's horrible what the NHL has done scheduling-wise to Chicago here. How do you play 3 and 4 nights to begin the season, right? In Colorado, in Vegas, in San Jose. You're off 6 fucking days after that. And now all of a sudden I'm worried about this long layoff for Chicago, not playing in a long period of time. We know long-term, we've seen these spots. Remember when the NHL was giving teams this 1-week break? And they'd come back from the 1-week break and they'd play poorly in that first game. So I'm really worried about that here for Chicago in this spot, that they've been off since, last Saturday when they played San Jose. That is a long period of time to be cooling your heels. And early in the season like this, a week into the year, you want to play. You want to get into a rhythm. You want to get into a routine. You want to be playing every other day, so you can really get that game speed and really get into that routine and rhythm as a hockey team. You don't want to be playing 3 games in 4 days and then you're cooling your heels for 6 days after that. So it does worry me a little bit for the Blackhawks here tonight in this game. And to be quite honest with you, I just think Detroit, a better group right now, a better squad. Perron, definitely from a prop standpoint, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. You can't go wrong with that. 4 points for Larkin, 1 goal, 3 assists. He's gotten off to a nice start, but certainly I like Perron to score a goal. You could even go with point props too, or goal props if you like, on Larkin and Sundqvist juices. Oscar Sundqvist. He's a guy that got the tying goal the other night against LA, and I think it's worth a sprinkle too on Dom Kubalik for the Detroit Red Wings as well. We always know that when a player plays their former team, especially for the first time, they want to make an impact. So I think the Dom Kubalik prop's worth a look. But yeah, I think it's a cheap number. I think it's a bargain on the better squad here, the Detroit Red Wings. The one concern is their futility and their struggles long-term in Chicago. But I think this is the best Detroit team in a while. We know Chicago is not going to have a very good season. Credit to them beating San Jose, but I don't think they're going to be able to follow that up tonight. And I hate the 6-day layoff. I think it's a bad thing for this Blackhawks team. So I like Detroit here at the reasonable price, -110, -115. Alex, what do you think here? Red Wings, Blackhawks.
I got to go with the old not so fast, my friend.
Oh, going homer tonight. I like it.
I am. And here's the thing. Here's the reason why. I would normally be right there with you as far as having a break early in the action. I think that's terrible. In the NHL, I think, as far as I know, they are throwing those mandated 5-game days off into everyone's schedule. Some teams draw them early. Some teams draw them in the middle of the year. Some teams draw them late. That's just how they shake out. But with the way the Hawks played, as bad as they were at the end of the preseason, and then to play against Colorado, one of the best teams in the league, in their opening night, play against Vegas in an electric atmosphere in a tough game, and then you play a bottom feeder in San Jose and get the win, they almost can kind of treat tonight like a second season opener and kind of look at that as like a step up of a preseason. So it gives them time to build. Now, obviously, Chicago is not the better of these two teams right now or even in a full season. But in this particular spot, you're going to have arguably, other than when they retire Marion Host's number on November 20th, this is going to be the biggest crowd of the year. You got Detroit coming into town, your hated rivals, even though we only play them twice a year. So this is the one and only time they come to the UC on an opening night. This is going to be more than likely Patrick Kane's last opening night wearing a Hawks uniform. Think about how he started his career. It was 14, 15 years ago against this Red Wings team. And, what was the beginning of that franchise turnaround. Now to be in a whole new generation and a whole new chapter of Hawks hockey, having him and number 19 standing there side by side. This better be the Madhouse of Madison. Like I said, it's going to be a mausoleum on Madison in about 2 or 3 months from now. But for tonight against Detroit, in the home opener, and this team's had days off, Hawks need to come out guns blazing in this game. I like the Hawks first period. Give me Sir Patrick Kane to score a goal at +180. And I think this is going to be a kind of a back-and-forth battle. Might even lean toward the draw here. Would not be shocked if this is a tightly contested game. We saw some overtime beatings with Chicago and Detroit going back to that shortened season where they were division rivals once again. So I think the Hawks come out hot here. I don't know if they can keep it going for 60 minutes because they are still a bad team. But the 20,000 plus should be rocking and rolling, and that team should be ready to go at least in the first 20 minutes of action. So Hawks first period, Patrick Kane anytime goal scorer tonight. And as always, Detroit sucks.
Yeah. There we go. Well, we can hope for a Chicago 2-1 lead after one or 1-0 lead after one, and Detroit comes back and wins, and everybody's happy. Although Alex may not be happy about that either. He doesn't want to see Detroit win at all. He doesn't give two shits about my bet, but nevertheless, we've got, like I say, a good point by occupancy in the chat, and we'll have to get you on the show too at some point. Occupancy during the season as well. We're going to try to get as many guests as many days as possible, and you're on the radar too. Terry Edelman, we'll get you on. Melissa, we'll get you on definitely throughout the course of the season. No doubt about that. But I want to mention Elmer Soderblom because occupancy brought him up. He did score one of the goals against LA the other night in that game, and pretty good play. He's been pretty good. He's been noticeable. He's had chances. He's had opportunities. I like what I've seen. You can actually find him. Not every book has his goal scorer prop posted, but you can get +500 at PointsBet, +575 at Caesars on him to score a goal tonight for the Detroit Red Wings. And Soderblom with Michael Rasmussen and on that third line with Rasmussen and Oscar Sundqvist. It's been an effective line. They're known as a checking line, but they've actually gotten some good offensive zone time and some scoring chances so far this year. So, if you want to put a couple bucks on Soderblom, +550 in some spots to score.
Isn't it historically the largest line by weight in history?
Yeah, I believe it is. It's a big line. You're right in terms of just their physical stature. No question about that. And they're hard on the puck, and it's hard to get the puck away from them. That's why they're an effective line, and that's why they're very good in a defensive role as well. But as I mentioned, they've had some offensive opportunities as well. All right, Nate, where are you going here with this Detroit-Chicago game?
Oh, man, I think I'm going to side with you, Ian, and I hate to go against Alex. Obviously, a big sort of Chicago hoping for sort of like, to his point, a TSN turning point, renewal, clean slate to the season after 6 days off. But I see the same thing as you. I mean, 6 days, I think, is an eternity in the NHL. I mean, you're going to come back on the ice your gear is going to feel a little bit different. 6 days, no matter what level you're playing at, is a lot. So I think that's going to be tough. I actually lean Detroit first period for that reason. I think when you look at Chicago, just the number of guys they've lost, DeBrincat, these guys that were chipping in and getting on the goal sheet for them, they just don't have enough offense. I mean, Jonathan Taves is not near obviously what he was. Patrick Kane kind of the same, although he's had a decent year last year. So I'm on Detroit first period and likely for the game. I also, when you look at the goaltender matchup, I like Ville Husso as opposed to Peter Mrazek. I mean, I'll take that every day. So I'm on Detroit here. The other thing I'd lean on, actually going back to last game, if I may, quick, I didn't mention it, but Alex Killorn under a point or under a half a point, -120 for a guy who has 2 assists this year, who had 2 assists in 23 playoff games. He's on the second power play unit. I'm all over that. I don't think he's getting into the action tonight. But for me, Detroit tonight, and it's one of the ones I like at the low price. I think they've been playing well. They hemmed Montreal in that first game. Just a lot of young talent on that team. But it is kind of a bummer when you look at a matchup like this, given the storied sort of rivalry between these franchises. And we look at tonight, and it's like, really these teams are not going to be contending. And so it's sad, given what these matchups used to mean and the star power that used to be on the ice. But for me, Detroit with the way the teams are at.
Well, and that's the thing too with this matchup is that no matter where, and if you look back in the last 30 years, we've seen the gamut run. I mean, Detroit was the power in the NHL, and the Hawks were the doormat. And then things flipped around. Detroit then moves to the Eastern Conference at the height of Chicago's power. And now you're back to where it was, arguably in the 2000s, where Chicago's the doormat, Detroit's a building team trying to get back to some resemblance of their top tier glory. But like I said, that's all the more reason why this should be an important game for the Hawks. Like I said, the history and tradition of these two teams is never lost on any group or any generation of players for either side, regardless of the fact that they don't play as division rivals. So and with the Hawks, I mean, if you're wearing this sweater, you should be taking some pride and honor playing Detroit, no matter how good or bad you are. Those teams in the late 90s, early 2000s, if they didn't beat anybody else, if they were at least tie or beat Detroit, they knew that was important in not only their eyes, but all the fans' eyes as well.
Fair point for sure.
Yeah, no question. Someone is liking our guest, Nate, Zach F, saying this guy makes some valid points. He knew in the chat here. There it is. This guy makes it. Yeah, that would be Nate. So you got some fans, Nate, in our chat. Certainly not talking about Alex or I.
Oh, I think they are, but happy to be here. Yeah, looking at took a peek through some of the advanced metrics today, and I guess it helped me. But
yeah, it is. I like keeping an eye on that stuff too, like the Corsi number, shooting percentages, which you brought up with Tampa. It's good to know that. It's good to incorporate that. You never base all your decisions off it, but it's definitely a good
shooting percentage and total shots. I think those are the two most important advanced metrics to transfer directly over into betting. Where Corsi and Fenwick, you can incorporate it into parts of your handicap, especially when you're looking at totals and things like that. But how frequently a team shoots the puck and how frequently it comes off their stick toward the net, is more important, because shots on goal, and it actually kind of leads into a little bit of an interesting thing. I don't know if you've seen people kind of arguing discrepancies over shot on goal counts, which is really a big problem possibly because we're all betting shots on goals over and under. Yeah. And if the league and the networks can't get right how many shots are on goal, because a perfect example is Matt Boldy the other night in that game with LA. I had his over over 2.5 shots. He gets there, but he really should have had 5 shots counted that I physically watched, and they only gave him 3. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when we talk about these player props, looking at the over-unders on shot on goals or a number. Sometimes I'll bet something like 4 or more goals, or 4 or more shots rather, on goal. You got to be careful how your books grade those things, because if they're going straight off of the NHL website at the end of the game, or if they're counting them in game, you might get some different things and things might be voided. So check with your sports books. We always say that, check with your sportsbook rules for different things to make sure that you're making a bet you can safely cash it and get credit for it where it's due.
I was thinking to myself, has Athanasiou been on the top line to this point, Alex, or is tonight going to be his first night on the top line?
Tonight's going to be his official first night. He was slotted in at times during the game, but as far as a starting spot, more than likely it would be him, Domi, Kane getting the starting nod for sure.
I think his spot.
That's the betting angle. Yep, you know it. Yep, moving up the lineup.
And you know what? I would actually
Stallion.
And you know what? And I like I said, I use Cap Friendly to kind of look at my the depth charts for lines. Don't be shocked if, because of this being the big night, and of course, like I said, with Kane and Taves, it's more than likely to be their last home opener. Don't be shocked if Taves centers that line to start the game, that first shift, and then we see Domi plugged in. That's so just for those fantasy and player prop reasons. Domi is going to be the first line center for most of the game, if not all of it. But I wouldn't be shocked if Taves takes the opening faceoff in that first shift.
Yeah, no question. And it's still a pretty solid price. Like, you're not going to get the steal, with him moving up to the top line like you did for Robertson for Toronto last night. But still, you can get plus 250 to plus 260 at a lot of books for double A. Andreas Athanasiou to find the back of the net here tonight for the Blackhawks. Might be worth a couple bucks. All right, final game on this Friday card. Seattle Kraken, Colorado Avalanche. We've got Colorado minus 250, home favorites, 6.5 the total in this game. 4 games, 4 overs for Colorado. I think they're going to make it 5 tonight. I like over 6.5 here. It was probably, I'm giving it away for best bet, but probably my favorite bet on the card tonight is this over 6.5. I think you're going to see, the usual Colorado game. You're going to see them find the back of the net 3-4 times minimum. But this Colorado team is not locking it down defensively and it's not because the blue line suddenly is bad. It's because their goaltending is more suspect. Darcy Kemper had a brilliant regular season. Was he a little bit up and down in the playoffs? Yes, but right now, it's only a week, but so far, what we've seen, Alexander Georgiev and Pavel Francouz, that combination is not matching Darcy Kemper from last year. I mean, Georgiev's been okay. He hasn't been great. They lose 4-3 in overtime against the Winnipeg Jets on Wednesday night. So that's been an issue. Their penalty kill has really struggled. That you don't like to see. Colorado Avalanche have given up 7 power play goals in their first 4 games. So the penalty kill's not been great for the Avalanche. Their power play continues to be great. So they're scoring on the power play. They're giving up a ton of goals on the penalty kill. That's a good thing for overs. And when you look at the Seattle Kraken, they're obviously off to a tough 1-4 start, but they did have their best game, I think, of the during this losing streak against St. Louis. They probably deserved a better fate. They outplayed St. Louis for a good portion of that game, but they ended up losing 4-3 in overtime because, every little mistake the Kraken made ended up in the back of their net against the Blues, including that game winner in overtime, just a giveaway leading to the goal that was scored by Justin Falk in overtime the other night. So just those little mistakes are costing the Seattle Kraken right now. So I'd like over 6.5 here in this game. I think you're going to get goals both ways in this game. It looks like a Philip Grubauer versus Pavel Francouz goaltending match tonight. So Grubauer and Francouz going to be the goalies confirmed in this game. I should point out, too, it's Vasilevsky, Bobrovsky, as you would expect for Tampa Bay, Florida. And it's Peter Mrazek confirmed for Chicago. We don't know yet who's in net. We think it could be Ville Husso, but it's not confirmed yet for the Detroit Red Wings. So that's where we're at with the goalies. So I like over 6.5 in this game. And look, when you look at the Colorado Avalanche, another thing worth mentioning is other than the Winnipeg game on Wednesday night, which ended 2-0 after the first period, 3 of the 4 Colorado games this season, both teams have scored in the first period. So I'm going to that as well. Both teams to score at plus 155 at BetMGM in the first period. I think that's a good look. I think it's a good chance we see the Kraken and the Avalanche both find the back of the net in the opening 20 minutes of play here in this game. Alex, what are you thinking here? Seattle, Colorado.
Yeah, I like high scoring early and often in this contest. So I'm going first period over 2. I got it at plus 110. We've seen money come and move that all the way now to where it's minus $1.05, $1.10. Still think there's good value there. This just feels like it's going to be just kind of a boat race of a game. Like you said, Seattle, their offense, they've been fun to watch. I mean, a lot of fun to watch. That game with St. Louis was a really good game the other night, the late game on TNT Wednesday. And Colorado, like I said, they're just as good as advertised. Still rocking and rolling with one of the best lineups, top to bottom. But the defense hasn't been as sturdy. The goaltending has been a bit shaky. So, like I said, the only thing you look here with good value would be over first period, over full game. I'm just going to stick with that first period over. Like I said, at over 2. If you can find a plus number, go for it. But I like it all the way till minus 10.
right, good stuff. And by the way, no Devon Taves tonight for the Colorado Avalanche, undisclosed injury. So he will not play. He got banged up with that injury late in the Winnipeg game on Wednesday night. So he'll be out. I don't think it's anything massive. It's day to day, but they just want to be cautious with him early in the season, which you can understand why that is. So Curtis McDermott is going to be the guy that's going to get the spot inserted into the lineup on the blue line for Colorado, which I like because we might see a tussle now tonight in this game. We know Curtis McDermott can handle himself,
Yes,
so hopefully someone on Seattle, I'm thinking maybe Oleksiak perhaps, someone along those lines might be able to drop
That'd be
the
a good scrap too. Those are
that
two
would be
big boys.
They would be. So I'd like to see that little Oleksiak versus McDermott dance card tonight. Potentially, that would be cool to see. After seeing Jacky and Cassian fight last night, we saw a good fight in the Minnesota game. Brandon Duhaime and Riley Stillman last night. I mean, actually, we've had a decent amount of fights here the last couple nights. I like seeing it. We need more of this shit.
Love to see it. Love to see it. Hope to see a fight with Hawks in Detroit as well. I mean, like I said, not really a whole lot of fighters on that team, but there's a couple of guys that can throw some hands. So and a rivalry, and of course Tampa Bay, Florida. Maybe this is a night. This would have to be the first night in a long time, even though it's only 3 games. This would be the first night in a long time where there's multiple games potentially where every game on the board we see a fight.
Yeah, it's funny. As the games were going on, I was texting with Jay Rosehill last night. He's going to be on the show Tuesday with us here on the Ice, guys. He dropped the gloves just a few times in the NHL when he played here. You know what? And we were saying we need to build up a heavyweight division again in the NHL, and it's possible. And you know why it's possible? Because of a guy like Arber Xhekaj, who is a huge player, who's a heavyweight type of class, who can handle himself, drop the gloves, but he can play, and that's what we need. We need hopefully more Arber Xhekajs in our future, where they're heavyweight players, but they have a space in this league because they're not one-dimensional. They're not players where all they can do is fight. All they can do is drop the gloves. They can play hockey. They can move the puck. They're good defensively, position-wise. They can help their team win. They can do other things, and that's why I'm hoping in the next 5-10 years, and I know Alex, who's a proponent of fighting in this league like I am, we want more Arber Xhekajs that can play with that kind of size, with that kind of fighting ability, toughness, physicality, that they can play at a level that keeps them in the league, so that they can stay in the league and they can get in fights in the NHL and they can be involved in the league, because it's going to have to be that way. Nobody's bringing in a player of that size, a heavyweight type player, if all they can do is fight. They've got to be able to play. They've got to be able to show some kind of ability with their overall game.
Well, and on the flip side too, the second and third line guys, and even some top
and they
line
be
guys
able to skate.
Yeah, of course, but the guys on the other lines, obviously they have their own roles, but they have to learn how to defend themselves too. In an era where we've arguably seen more cheap shots in the last decade than we have since going back to the 60s and 70s, when, of course, it was a virtually lawless league at times, it seemed like. This is definitely that era where, like I said, the enforcer role isn't dead yet. It's still alive, but it has to be, like I said, a complement to your overall game, not just the focal point of your game. And so with that being said, some of these second and third line guys, there's some guys who can score and handle the puck well, but can hold their own in fights. And hopefully we just see that increasement throughout the league, because then, guys can handle themselves nice, police things on the ice. Then, we don't see as many dirty hits, as many cheap shots, or as many guys missing games because of suspensions.
Yeah. I mean, Nick Delorier is another guy that comes to mind, right? Acquisition for the Wild. I mean, he chips in. I mean, you look at somebody like Ryan Reeves, who maybe not the best skater, but I think can chip in as well. Pat Maroon. Like, there's these tough guys who, your point, Ian, like, you have to be able to skate this day and age. Fourth lines are a lot of times about speed now, so it's tough to fit some of those guys in. But there's definitely those tough guys in the league now that are chipping in or able to put in 10, 12, 15 goals even a year. Which is, I think, what you'll see. And ideally, we to your point, Alex, we'll see them, kind of police the ice and try to diminish some of the dirty play for sure.
Yeah, Brandon Duhaime is one of those guys, fourth line guy, but he can, won't give you a whole lot on the score sheet, but he does a lot physically, throws the body around, blocks shots, clears the puck well when he's,
at least an average skater, or if not above average.
Right. Yeah. He's a slightly above average skater, but he threw the hands the other night in a really good scrap against Vancouver. So, like I said, it's just it's a compliment to the game now. It's not your focal point. You're not gonna, and not to say that I don't miss the days of having guys who just really roam the ice strictly to fight. Those were fun times. But the game has evolved. But that should be part of the evolution of it, is that guys can still handle their own and take care of themselves and their teammates.
Yeah. I mean, you cannot be one dimensional. I hate, and I like those guys they were there to police. They were there to stick up for their teammates and drop the gloves at every opportunity. That's what they were on the ice for. And, the 90s and early 2000s, you're not going to see your Stu Grimsons anymore. Your Marty McSorleys anymore. Your Mick Vukota. Remember him? Mick Vukota? Way back. I'm going way back in the day mentioning a name like that. But you remember some of these guys in the 90s they were fighters. They were out there to fight, drop the gloves. They weren't great in terms of skating and offense and doing things in terms of the realm of the hockey game to obviously help routinely, but they were there to fight. But they're not going to bring players for solely that reason onto a roster anymore this day and age. It's just
one more quick thing to wrap it up too. The evolution of the game, you've got skilled players who have spent their whole careers playing alongside skilled players that didn't need that kind of a protection. Look at Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, and Patrick Kane. Right, 3 of the best players in the world, arguably, at the given time in the height of their careers. They didn't have to have somebody like a Marty McSorley kind of lugging around as a winger. They got to play with Alex DeBrincat and Artemi Panarin and Evgeny Malkin and Nick Backstrom to facilitate them and even give them more scoring opportunities. So just imagine if Gretzky and Lemieux and all those guys didn't have to have that kind of protection alongside on the ice. If they were able to play with all star line or all high skill line, they could have done more. So that just shows you the evolution of the game, that your skilled players, you don't have to have somebody babysit them. But like I said, you still want to have somebody on that team when the bell the call needs to be answered, the bell's rung, they can step up there and do the job.
Yeah, no doubt. And R.I.P. John Kordick, indeed. And that guy was tough as nails. I mean, I could go on and on about John Kordick, Joey Kosher, Kelly Buckberger, Dennis Bonvie. You go on. There's just so many from Gino Ojic. I mean, holy mackerel! There's just tons of them back in those days. Where unfortunately, 2022 NHL, it's hard if they were around, it'd be hard for them to crack a roster. Damn near impossible for some of them. It's just the way it is. But that's what makes the Arbor Jackeye story so great. He's huge. He's a towering presence. He's a menace. He's an incredibly good fighter. We've seen that because he's won every fight I think he's had in the NHL so far. But he can skate. He can move. He can play defense. He can do things to help the team on the ice. And I want more of that because I want more fighting. And if you're going to have fighting in this league, you're going to have players that can do more than just that to help their hockey team. Nate, what do you think here? Seattle, Colorado.
Preaching to the choir, I love the over too. It was one of the first things I looked at. And I mean, to go back into the stats, right? Seattle, who has a lot of offensive players, you look at expected goals 4 or 5 on 5. They're at the top of the league in terms of scoring less than expected, right? They're expected to have about 5 more goals 5 on 5 than they do. I think you have 2 goalies that really aren't struggling. You laid out the stats. Grubauer hasn't been great. Either goalie on Colorado, really not a starting goalie in the league, in my opinion. I think when you look at Seattle's decor, they have some, stalwarts and Alexiak and some of those folks who are defensive minded, but Larson, Justin Schultz, Vince Dunn, all want to be puck moving defensemen. They're not really stay at home. I think that allows a lot of offensive opportunities. And the other 2 things, I mean, you mentioned it, but these 2 teams are 28th and 25th on the penalty kill in the league. And on the flip side, they're 1st and 8th in power play percentage. And they're also top 20 in penalty minutes taken. So like everything to me adds up to the over here. I think 6.5 is really a gift with this Colorado team. I also think Seattle coming to Colorado, I maybe like Colorado here after a tough loss in Winnipeg to at puck line. I mean, I think it's -110, so it's not great value. But if you're going to be on Colorado, you have to take the puck line with how juicy their money line bets are. And so I think Seattle having to come into Colorado tonight is going to be tough. I think Colorado puts up 4 or 5 goals and maybe sneaks away with a 5-2 win, something like that. And we see over 6.5 hit and the Avalanche puck line is a lean for me as well. So the other thing, and I probably wouldn't play it, but Matty, what is it? Matty Beniers or Beniers?
Matty Beniers. Yeah.
He's like, putting up points already. Their power play is getting a lot of opportunities. He's at over to have a point tonight is -120. I think he's, also another guy I'd maybe look at. I don't know about scoring, but goal or assist with the way their power play works, and Colorado's penalty kill is maybe another lean for me. But definitely the over. I think it's the best bet of the night out of the 3 games.
And that might be a kind of last call for alcohol situation with that kind of value on him, because if he keeps getting a point per game, that's only going to go up to 125, 130, 135, etc. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, Nate, about the Matty Beniers props. I mean, I've certainly mentioned them a couple of times this year. Goal scorer prop is to score a goal tonight is plus 300 to plus 330. In some spots to score a goal, and his point prop is still very reasonable. I'm seeing as low as minus 102 at Pinnacle to get a point, and minus 120, minus 125. That's still very reasonable. Matt Beniers just to get 1 point tonight for the Seattle Kraken. They're better offensively too, with Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand added to this team. So we figured they'd be better offensively. I know they had those couple games there, Vegas and Carolina. They scored just 2 goals, 1 goal in those 2 games. But we think the Seattle team is going to be better offensively. And overall, they have still in their first 5 games, they have scored 3+ goals in 3 of the 5 games so far this year. So I think we're all in agreement here. We should see some goals tonight with the Kraken and the Avs. All right, great stuff. That's your Friday NHL card, 3 games. Great analysis as always with Alex B. Smith, my colleague, and our guest, Nate Rapensky. And thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us. Hit the like button. Make sure you do that on the way out. And, of course, check out patreon.com/Ice Guys. Just $10 a month. Great content. The daily Ice Guys card is always available there. Power ratings, weekly goalie charts from Alex, and a whole lot more. Patreon.com/Ice Guys. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, definitely. We got up there Chris Otto, friend of the program. He will be doing some of his first period charts. We'll have those up there at least once a week, if not twice. Of course, he's got his own page, too, that you can check out, Otto's Hockey Portal, for the more expansive notes. But we'll have all the first period stuff on the Patreon page as well. Like I said, just $10 a month. We got some bonus content coming up. We're going to do some rankings and some charts, some videos. So we got a lot of cool things there. Someone mentioned in the chat about us doing super chats moving forward. We might get to that at some point. There'll be more details where people can, you can tip us or kind of, donate to the program if you so choose. So that's something we might do as well. We got a lot of things that are kind of moving parts and working, behind the scenes that we're getting, geared toward moving forward in the season.
Yeah, it would help that kind of stuff to go into motion if YouTube hadn't denied a request to monetize the channel that I made a long time ago, but that's another story. Come on, YouTube, get with the program here. We're getting close to 3K subscribers. It's time to move on that. But we'll try again. We'll see if we can get that done. But nevertheless, great stuff. Nate, you're welcome to join us, obviously, anytime.
Yeah. Great job. Thanks. Happy to be back on. Looking forward to some of these games tonight and hopefully, my Minnesota Wild getting back on track. But thanks, guys. Always a pleasure, and have a great weekend.
All right. And we will wrap up with best bets now before we call it a show. As always, frustrating for me last night. I go 10-2 on the NHL card. And one of the 2 losers was my best bet on the show, which was Anaheim-Boston over the total, which didn't even come close. But we'll see if we can rally back today. Alex, for this Friday card, what do you like for best bet?
Yeah, we're going to the late night game, Colorado, Seattle. First period over 2. Like I said, try to look for a plus price, but anything minus $1.10 or better is definitely worth betting here. These are 2 teams that are flying high early and often, and I don't see where the defense comes in, at least early in the contest. I think we're going to see a Colorado team that's fired up. Seattle's offense, I think that's going to continue to blossom and come through with some solid scoring early in the contest. So Kraken, Avalanche. First period over 2, minus 10, but we're trying to shoot for a plus price. I got plus 105. So like I said, definitely shop around for the best of that number.
All right, there it is. Seattle, Colorado, over 2, first period. Best bet for Alex B. Smith. Nate, what do you like for best bet?
Yeah, I'm going to go boring and straightforward. I think 6.5, Seattle and Colorado. I'd take that all day. I'd hit it pretty hard. I saw MDR 24 in the chat too. It looks like if you have the availability to look at alternate totals, Avs money line and over 5.5 might be plus 100. So even odds on that. Colorado at home, I absolutely love. So, but for me, 6.5, I think is a lock in this game. I think Colorado's scoring 4 or 5 goals minimum, and with Seattle's sort of renewed and improved offense this year, I think 6.5 is a pretty light total for this game. I would have expected it at 7, and I think the line's a little misplaced. So that's the bet for me.
All right, there we go. Seattle, Colorado, over 6.5. Best bet for Nate Rapensky here on this Friday card. And mine is going to be the same. Seattle, Colorado, over 6.5 here for my best bet. Minus 130 to minus 135. Still out there on this. I think we'll see 7 goals. Keep in mind, and Colorado off a loss. From a side perspective, it would be Colorado in some form, regulation or puck line or nothing. I don't bet against this team off a loss, rarely ever. And they're off one against Winnipeg. The last time they were off a defeat this year, they lost to Calgary last week. Then they bounced back in Minnesota. They beat the Wild 6-3. So, this team's usually pretty good off a loss. And that game, of course, went over the total as well. Colorado off a loss. So I would lean Colorado, but my best bet for this Friday card is going to be Seattle, Colorado, over 6.5, minus 130 for my best bet. All right, that'll wrap up this edition of the Ice Guys. Thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us. Hit the like button again on the way out. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern, although it's going to be a little bit later tomorrow. Our guest, Kyle Bond, is got some recreational sporting activities in the morning, so he's going to, once he gets home, he's going to join us right away. So around 12:30, quarter to 1 Eastern time is about when we will get the show going tomorrow for a huge Saturday card. So make sure you join us for that tomorrow on the Ice Guys. A huge amount of games as usual on a Saturday.
Yeah, and I think we got a couple of early games before the show. If we like any plays there, follow us at _Ice Guys on Twitter. We will tweet those out. Whichever plays I or Ian have, we'll have that marked aside well in the morning before the show begins.
Yeah, exactly. We're aiming for 12:30 to 12:45 p.m. Eastern time. We'll post anything we like in the 2 early games, but we'll be able to get to them too on the show even before the puck drops on those 2 games. So, and those would be San Jose, New Jersey, and Minnesota, Boston. The 2 really early games tomorrow. So looking forward to Kyle Bond joining us again tomorrow on the show. Join us for that. And make sure you download the Ice Guys podcast, available on all major podcast platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. For Alex P. Smith and Nate Rapensky, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Friday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again tomorrow on Saturday for another edition of the Ice Guys presented by National Hockey Now.